Bienvenue, Shabbat Shalom everybody, and you are welcome to the Shabbat of this morning. As usual, I always glorify the name of the Lord, our God, our King, the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for the opportunity that has granted unto his servant and unto each and every one of us to come and to behold and to see this sunny day also in the land of the living. It's a little bit cold, but it's a beautiful day, all right? And we're going to talk about a woman this morning in our parasha, because in this morning parasha we see that the story that God, that the Torah narrates to us, about the destruction of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. But I want us to go a little bit back, to see actually what actually happened all throughout this process, for especially the family of Abraham Avinu. I want us to look at that family itself, and that is extremely important. And because if a nation starts from where? From a single family. If a city starts from a family, a town starts from a family, a village starts from a family. Everything starts from a family. Even though human being will start from what? From a cell. Two cells come together, they divide, right? And they grow. So everything is from the minute unit. So we have to understand that. So I want us to deal with the family of our father Abraham this morning. Okay? The parasha of this morning is called Parasha Vayera. The parasha of this morning is called Parasha Vayera, and I subtitle it The Hagar in Us. The Hagar in us. Everybody have an Hagar. That is the name of the servant of Sarah. The maid servant of Sarah, her name is Hagar. I want us to understand each and every one of us have an Hagar in us. Each and everybody. And we are going to discuss about this woman named Hagar. Who is she? Because the Torah says she is the maid servant of Sarah. So sometimes we do not ask ourselves, how many maid servants does Sarah have? Sarah have a lot of them, hundreds of them, because we remember that Abraham has 450 men, who are his disciples, who are his men. And these men, they have their wives and their children. How many servants does Sarah have? And why did Sarah decided to pick Hagar and give to her husband Abraham? There must be something she saw in Hagar that other maid servant doesn't have, right? There's something. So I want us to go a little bit into the life of this woman that has been overlooked. Many of us say, many people, many rabbis, they have overlooked her. She's a woman that is abandoned. She's a woman that is an outcast. She's a woman that has been removed. So she's a woman without no name. You see, so she has been overlooked. But we have to see, we have to open our eyes, we have to search deep to know who is this woman called Hagar. We want to understand this woman. Okay. Remember, I'm going to take us a little bit back. When Abraham was in Israel, when Abraham, our father, was in Egypt, right? And when they were about to leave Egypt, Pharaoh gave them, him and his wife, this lady, Hagar, to be a servant to who? To Sarah. Why did a Pharaoh, the king, at that time, the king of the world, at that time, gave a girl to who? To Sarah, to be her servant? Was that girl just ordinary girl? No. Actually, the sage said that Hagar was a princess in Egypt. Hagar was not ordinary girl. Hagar has the blood of the king in her. She's not the ordinary person that Sarah has a lot of servants. Why didn't she go and choose anyone and give it to Abraham to father a child from? Why Hagar? This is because Hagar was a princess. The blood of the kings run in her. Okay, her blood is a special blood. It's not just an ordinary blood like a common. No, Hagar, she's not a common. She's special. And that is why Sarah took her and gave her to her husband to father a son from her. So we are going to see what actually happened from there. Okay? The story began in Genesis chapter 16. Don't forget, the parasha of this morning is from Genesis chapter 18, right? That's where we start. But I want to take us a little bit back to chapter 16. Abram and Sarah, at this time, their name has not been changed. Abram and Sarai are childless. Sarah gave her Egyptian slave girl, Hagar, to Abraham so that he might have children through her. Hagar became pregnant, and as a result, Sarah became threatened by her presence in the household. In a moment of apparent moral silence, Abraham shrugged his shoulder. Your maid is in your hand. Deal with her as you think right. Sarah abused the handmaid, who ran away into the wilderness. There the angels find her by a fountain of water, and the angel asks her the crucial question of life. You see, I'm just giving us a summary. All this are the summary, okay? Sarah, right, gave the housemaid to who? To her husband to be a what? To be his wife. That was the decision of Sarah himself. You see, we have to understand that anytime we human beings put our hand in the things of God, we spoil it. God has said that you will bear a son. But sometimes, yes, we are human beings, we are all human beings, and I give glory to the Almighty God. That is why the Torah is the truth and nothing but the truth. Torah is so fantastic that the Torah describes our heroes in the Torah as a human being like me and you, so that we can be able to relate with them individually and collectively. These are not superheroes. Remember, the Greek gives you superhero, so that you cannot associate yourself with a superhero because it's a superhero. But in the Torah paints our heroes human being with flesh, bone, and blood, so that we, their descendants, can relate with them. Say, if my forefather passed through this, I myself can pass through it. If my forefather passed through this, I myself can survive. You see, it's a moral message. It's a message of confidence to build up our mind, right? So I can say, okay, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was building the mind of the Israelites that came out from where? From Mizraim, because these people were what? They were slaves, and they have the slave master mentality. If they cannot do anything without their master telling them to do so, and Moshe said, no, you are not independent. You have to do things yourself. You are the master of your life. And he began to tell them, remember, you are the son of God. You are not a slave of Pharaoh. No, you are the son of God. You know that? You have to build on yourself. Stand up. He's giving them a mental understanding so that they can build up themselves mentally. Alright? So here, Sarah put her hand to mess up the plan of God. She started it. Said, okay, I'm old, I cannot do anything else, and my husband is getting old. Okay, my husband, for us to have a child, I give you this princess, so she can be your wife, and we can bear a son from her. Now, the woman conceived. As soon as she conceived, she begins to despise her mistress. Right? And Sarah doesn't like that. Of course, two women cannot stay in the house. Even though a mama and a daughter, as soon as the daughter grow up to become 18 years old, competition starts. It is nature. It is nature. It is natural. If two women can never live in a house. Never. One has to go out. So I say, okay, my daughter, Basil, go out and start building your own life. It is like that. It is nature. So we need to understand how we have to put ourselves in the shoes of Sarah. Yes, she caused the trouble, but there must be a way out. The lady was annoyed that Sarah, because Sarah is a human being, right? She mistreated her. The Torah said that Sarah treated her very harsh, very, very harsh, because the way Sarah was treating her before now has changed because of her own behavior too, right? So she ran away from the house. And she was running away into the wilderness. And there, the angel of God met with her. And the angel of God asked her the greatest question. the question, the very crucial question of life. Let's see. Hagar, handmaid of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going? That is the crucial question of life. Where are we coming from and where are we going? A man that does not know where he's coming from cannot know where he's going. A woman that doesn't know where she's from cannot know where she's going. A person that forgets their past will never have a future. That's what the angel is asking. Hagar says, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarah. The angel convinced her to return to Sarah, comforting her with the knowledge that she will bear a son, whose name will be Ishmael, meaning God hears. That's the meaning of the word. That's the name of the. That's the meaning of the name Ishmael. God hears. He will be a white ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hands against him. And he shall dwell alongside all his kinsmen. Hagar then named the God who spoke to her El Roi, which means God who sees. And the place is therefore called Beleharoi. Okay, Beleharoi. That's the name of the place. So the angel talked to her, convinced her, discussed with her, said, "Do not run away from your mistress. Go back home. Go and subject yourself to the rule of your mistress." Do you see? There is an hierarchy, right? In the spiritual world, the same thing. There is an hierarchy. In the physical world, the same thing. You are what subjected to your mistress. You cannot be what a mistress over your mistress. Okay, no. You have to, even though she has no child, you have to respect her because she's your mistress. That is, a respect is what is reciprocal. I give you a respect, you give me a respect. Respect is not one way road. Right? It's not a one way, no, it's two ways. So initially there was that communication, that respect between both of them. But as soon as she feels that she's pregnant now, she becomes pompous, pride, ego, I comes in. And then it is only Sarah that is giving the respect, but she's not reciprocating that respect back to Sarah. So Sarah gets hungry. Then Sarah went to the world, to her husband. "Oh, my husband, you see, they start complaining. But you started it. You caused it." No, yes. She caused it. Now she complained. The Abraham said, "Oh, no, if you know what, I don't want problem with women. My hand is up." The man will always look for a way to escape, right? "My hand is up. I don't want any woman problem. Go deal with your servant the way you want. She's not my servant. I'm what? I'm holy. Go do whatever you want to want. It is your choice. Go and deal with her, not me." Then she treated her harshly. She ran away, and the angel of God discussed with her, chat with her, and give her the knowledge that she's going to have a son, and that son will be great and mighty. Remember when she went out? If you read the Torah very well, she was pregnant. In the Talmud, we understand that pregnancy she lost it. Okay, she lost the first pregnancy. The second pregnancy was the birth of Ishmael. Okay, the first one that she ran away with, she lost it. Then the second one was Ishmael, the birth of Ishmael. So let's continue. Acts 2 in the drama occurred chapter later in Genesis chapter 21. The covenant has been sealed. Abraham and Sarai are now Abraham and Sarah. Abraham has already bargained with God in the matter of Sodom and Gomorrah. Sarah has been promised a child, and God comes through on that promise. Isaac is born, and Hagar and Ishmael stand on the sideway at the wedding ceremony. With Ishmael Mezahek ceremony, okay, the Midrash goes wide from here. Was Ishmael playing with Isaac? Or was he fooling around? Or was Ishmael making mockery of the ceremony? Nobody knows, Was he shooting at Isaac? I don't know. But one thing that we know is that there was tension in the house. The tension that has been laying dormant, boom, blows up, erupts. Sarah became angry and jealous of her handmaid, Hagar. She is, after all, only a helpmate. I don't need her. I have thousands of them. I have millions of them. So I don't need her. Now, Sarah must have despised the presence of this young, healthy, fertile woman in her camp. You see, the old woman, our matriarch, Sarah, was actually jealous of this woman because this one, she's young, right? She's fertile, she's strong, right? And so it is a human being. We are human beings, understand? Sarah has her own ego too. Don't forget, ego is not necessarily negative. It is how we control it. If you don't know how to control your ego, it becomes a negative. But once you can control your ego, subject your ego to the spiritual authority, then it becomes positive. That is what I'm saying. See, Sarah has her own ego too. So she became jealous of this woman. And so, the matriarchs begged Abraham, our forefather, to cast Hagar and her son in the desert, which means certain death, right? Because they can't just cast somebody into that place. It's a desert. So where's the water? What are they going to eat? What are they going to drink? The sun will hit them. And this guy was a young boy. He was just 13 years old, right? Or maybe at this point he's 14 or 15 years old. He's a lad. It's just a young boy. Now they have to leave. He has to live with his with his mom in the desert. Okay, and that is a certain death. It's a death sentence for both of them. Abraham does so, giving them only a skin of water for the journey. Hagar stumbled in the desert with her son. She carried the parched lad on her back. And she said, quote, "Let me not look on as the child died." She pleads, and so she pleaded, and so she cast the lad under a thorn bush. At that precise moment, her eyes were opened into the presence of a gushing well of water. Ishmael drinks from the well, and he survived to become the ancestor of the Ishmaelites, the Arab nation, and that of the Bedouin. Remember what happened, that this young boy survived by the hand of God. For God opened the eyes of the mama to see the well of water, so that the child can drink, so that the child can be revived, so that the mama can drink and they can continue on their journey. Right. So this was a death sentence. Abraham initially resisted. Right. Abraham, it is not the will of Abraham to cast out his son, because it's his loved son. He loved him too. It's not easy. He resisted, but God has to intervene. God told Abraham, do exactly what your wife said. See, he stopped. Are we going to say that God is wicked? No. God has foreseen the future. God has already made a provision for the boy. God said, don't worry. God told Abraham, don't worry about the boy. I'm going to take care of him. God has already assured Abraham, because many people say, oh, this man is a wicked man. How you just throw somebody away with just one ordinary small bottle of water in the wilderness, in the desert, that they're going to walk 5,000 kilometers in the desert? Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Now, in our world, they're going to say, this is what? This is child abuse, right? It's a child abuse, and they will take Abraham and jail him and take all the property of Abraham and give it to Hagar, right? That's it. That's what they do it now, right? In Canada, and they will take the child and put the child in Zejepel or what they call it, right? That is it. But God assured Abraham, don't worry. Do exactly what your wife said. I will take care of the boy. The boy's life is in my hand. I take care of it. And God actually did. And Ishmael became a great and a mighty nation. When gazing into the history of Hagar and Ishmael, it reminds me that when we reclaim the story of Hagar and Ishmael, we reclaim something essential human in ourselves as well, because there is Hagar in every one of us. Each and every one of us have our own Hagar. Okay? What does it mean to be Hagar? What does it mean? What does it mean to be Hagar? We really stop and realize that Hagar is a pivotal figure in biblical theology. She is the first woman to be told that she will have a child. Can you remember that? Hagar is the first woman in the Torah that was told that she's going to have a child. In the written Torah, she's the first woman. Not even Sarah, our matriarch. No, it was Hagar that was first told that she's going to have a child, and you shall name him so. Okay, she was the first woman. Let's continue. The first woman to hear the divine promise of a descendant. She is the first woman to hear a divine promise of a descendant. Not even Sarah. Can you imagine? Let's continue. She is the first woman to weep for a dying child. Right? She is the first woman in the written Torah to weep for a dying child. Let's continue. She is the first woman visited by an angel. Can you imagine? Not even Sarah. All these things did not happen to Sarah, but all happened to who? To Hagar. Not only this, she is the only person in the Hebrew Bible that has the Gentile chutzpah to name God Elroy. Can you imagine? This is the only person, the only woman in the Bible that named God, that give God name. The first one. Can you imagine? A woman, not even Sarah, but this maid that is called Hagar. Okay? She named God Elroy, which means God who see. God who see my problem. God who see my pain. God who see all my trouble. God who see what I'm facing now. You see? So, she is therefore a new and a radical Adam, taking over the power of naming and applying this power even to the name. Remember that God called Adam, Adam, come, name all the animals, right? Adam named all the animals. So Hagar here now, or Hagar here now, she's doing the same thing that Adam did. She gave God a name. She named God, and she acted upon that name. The name that has power. There is a woman. So this woman, she's a special woman in the Torah. Most of the time, we always overlook her. We always, she's not part of our descendant. We're not concerned. We're only concerned about my own line, my own lineage. Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, and those are the people that I'm concerned about. We always forget and overlook her. A woman without no, I call her a woman without no name. See, that is, and it is very sad. We have to understand, to see from the perspective and from what Torah is painting, the picture that the Torah is telling us. Now, okay, when we look at Hagar, we see our own image in her too, but slightly distorted. Okay, she goes into forced exile back into Egypt. Her footsteps in the sand of Negev and Sinai were there for us to see on our way out of Egypt for our ancestors when they were coming out of the land of Egypt to the Mount Sinai. I repeat again. When we look at Hagar, we see our own image, the image of who? Of Israel, but a little bit distorted. Okay, a little bit. Now, what are these things that we see? Okay, one, she goes into a forced exile. She was forced out of her house into an exile. an exile inside the world, inside the wilderness, in the desert. She was forced because it wasn't her will. She was forced down there. The same thing like us in Egypt. Her footstep in the Negev, in the Sinai Peninsula. She was walking in the desert. We can see it. We can understand it because we faced the same experience. We had the same experience when we were coming out of the land of Egypt. We walked through the same path. We walked through the same Negev, but we passed all the way to Mount Sinai. Okay, let's continue. As Philip Strabo, there's a man called Philip, a writer called Philip Strabo. He notes in the text of terror, in his book called The Text of Terror, he notes that Hagar experiences exile without liberation. Hagar experienced exile without liberation, but we experience exile with liberation. Can you see the difference? Okay. She experiences a wilderness, but with no covenantal moment of Sinai that are awaiting her. She experienced a wilderness without what? Without a covenantal moment, which means there was no covenant. She didn't go and wait for God at Sinai. So there was no covenant made. You know, we had a covenant with God at Sinai when God gave us the Torah. But in the case of Hagar, this didn't happen to her. She wanders, but with no land in the distance. She wandered around in the wilderness with no land that she can call her own. We wander in the wilderness, but we have a future because there was a land awaiting us. But God has promised us a land, the land of Canaan. But in the case of Hagar, there wasn't like that. Nothing. She knows unmerited exile, but with no hope of return. Hagar known unmerited exile. That is exile for eternity, with no hope to return. But we experience exile, and we are still experiencing exile at the present. Because as far as we remain outside of the land of Israel, we are experiencing exile, but with hope of return. Because we have a land. But in the case of this woman, she has no land where to return to. So we have to put all these things in our mind, that this woman, she sees a lot. She experienced a lot. She has seen a lot of things in her life with her children. Finally, her story is, in the best sense, multicultural. We tend to always overlook those that do the dirtiest job. Which is true. So too with Hagar. Most of us in the if I ask you now, do you know the person that cleaned the synagogue? I don't know. I always say that the synagogue is clean. It's like that. Oh, do you know the people that park when we finish our next Shabbat? Do you know the person that clean and make everything right before we go? Oh, I don't know. You see, most of us. The people that do the dirtiest job, nobody remember them. The people that people remember are those people on top. You see, they don't remember the man, the woman that stayed in the office, right? That sat down 12 hours, 20 hours, doing all the job. Nobody care about you. They pay you your $20, your $15 an hour. Why the CEO, right? Who is playing golf? The CEO that is playing golf, they give him 20 billion for what? That is, they call it a bonus. That is not his salary. Bonus. You see, nobody care about you. The same thing here. This woman, the workers that worked, they overlook them. Nobody remember them. But those people who are on top, those are the people that people remember. We can see this also in us. And this is where the irony comes from. This woman, Hagar, named God, called God El Roi. But she is herself mostly unnamed. The woman, nobody care about her, nobody even remember her name. Okay? The only character in the store who called her by name is the angel. The only character in the written Torah that called Hagar by name was an angel. Not even Sarah, the what? The mistress. Not even Abraham, the husband. Nobody call her by name. They call her servant. Servant. It is only the angel that call her by her name. Do you know how it is important for someone to call you by your name? It's a respect. That means that they recognize you. That means that they recognize your work. They recognize your contribution. They recognize your value. They value you. Hey, man, servant, hey, come. You see, understand that? It's annoying and it is sad. It's belittling. It's belittling. Okay? It is only the angel that call her by her name, Hagar. What are you doing here? Where are you from? And where are you going? To Sarah, she is the Aman. What is the meaning of Aman? Haman in Hebrew meaning a helper. She's just my helper. Yes, she's a princess. I don't care. She's just my helper. You know? The slave girl. You don't have to be totally you don't have to be totally politically correct to see this. Because in the world that we live now, everything will have to be politically correct, right? Oh, if you are not politically correct, they call you names. Oh, that rabbi, he's a stupid rabbi. He doesn't tell me what is good. He tells me that I'm a gay. You know, I'm a child of God too. I don't say that you are not a child of God. It is you that judge. That it is you who is going to judge yourself. But according to the Torah, to me, you are not. I don't judge you. Who am I to judge a man? I cannot judge anybody. Only God can judge. I'm just standing with what the Torah said. Right? Thou shalt not do this. Thou shalt not do that. You shall do this. You shall do this. You shall do justice. You shall do this and that. That what I stand by. It's not me to judge you. Let the Holy One, blessed be He, judge each and every one of us. Right? So I'm just saying. So this is what we can see, that nobody, you know, even thinks about this woman, the pain, what this woman has seen or passed through. Her story represents three causes of oppressions. 3. 1, nationally. 2, class. And 3, gender. You see, there is a kind of national oppression. Right? Oh, she's an Egyptian. Let's mash her down. You know, she's not from Europe. She's not from England, you know. She's not from France. She's not an American, right? Let's press her down. Yeah, forget about that, you know. She's not a Canadian. She's not from the first class, you know. She's not from the first world. You know, we have the first world, the second world, and the third world, you know. They break everything in classes, you know. That is human being. That is ego. I want to feel superior over my fellow men. You see? That is it. So, and again, secondly, a class. We have different classes, right? And thirdly, a gender. She's not ordinary. She's just an ordinary woman. What's a woman? We don't care. We can take and sell her, you know. It's a woman. She's not a man. It's a woman. She has no what? She has no value. That is what they're saying. So, she is the poor woman, the homeless woman, the bag woman. You know the meaning of a bag woman? A bag woman is a woman, you know, those people that carries bag for their masters. You know, we have the mistress, yeah, and there's a woman, you know, that carry the bag of the mistress. Follow the mistress. It's very, very common in Japan. You know, you see that they follow the woman follow the mistress. You know, carry her bag. You know, if the woman want to spit, the servant will go put her hand like this, spit on the hand. You know, so such a low level worker. You know, that's what I'm saying. See, she is a homeless woman. She has nobody to defend her, nobody to help her, nobody even recognize her presence. You know. So, let's continue. She is the poor woman, the homeless woman, the bag woman, the resident alien, the single mother, the widows. You know, she is a woman that has no crown to cover her head because her crown has been taken away. The husband is no longer there. She's alone, right? She is all that is cast out. She's an outcast. She is not only Hagar, but Hagar the stranger. She is the piece of ourselves that we deny, that embarrasses us. That embarrasses us. You know? They are all these characteristics I painted here is in some part of our life. This thing, we don't like to look at it. It embarrasses us, so we hide it. We don't want to look at that side. We only look at the side that is hunky-dory. Hey, right? Those the other one, no. But you have to look at those sides and deal with it. We can't put our head in the sand like ostrich and say, oh, everything is fine. But everything is not fine. So you think that when you put your head in the sand, that everything will disappear? No. When you raise your head from the sand, the problem is there. I said, hey, monsieur. He's going to call you monsieur. It's not going nowhere. So we have to deal with that. We have to face it. Many people who are afraid to face our what? To face our problem. We always run away. You think that when you run away, the problem will not run after you? Anywhere you go, it will follow you. You have to stand firm. We have to stand firm and solve it. Solve the problem so that the problem cannot be following after us anywhere we go. Okay? What does it mean to be an Ishmael? Ishmael is that piece of us that remain on the sideline. The piece of us that cannot understand what is going on in the ritual, that is alienated and therefore is alienating. But in the midst of the wilderness, when the lad is dying, we read that God heard his what? His cries. Ba Asher Husham, which means where he is. God is asking, where's the boy? Where he is? I can hear his voice. God was listening to the voice of the lad. When the lad was crying, hey, mama, no water, I want to drink. The mama cannot look at the boy dying. The mama took the boy and threw the boy under the tree and go far away and wash, because it's a pain for a mother to see their dying child. Because she remember the boy he put in the belly for 9 months. The joy, the happiness. No, he's sad. But God was listening to the voice of the child. The Midrash relates that the angel cried out to God. In our Midrash, the Midrash relate that the angel of God cried unto God, O Master of the universe, let him die. One of the angels said, let him die. Didn't you see that in the days to come, he will be the sons of Ishmael that will wage war against the Holy Land and ravage it and ravage the entire city? One of the angels saying, communicating with God, right? Say, God, let the boy die. Are you not seeing that this boy, his descendant, will be the one that is going to wage war against the whole holy city and ravage it and destroy all the cities? And let's see the answer of God. God said, no. No, says God. I hear the cry of the child where he is now at this moment in crisis. I'm hearing the voice of the child where he is now at this moment in his crisis. I can hear it. The boy is what? Is innocent. The boy has no sin. The boy is clean. And God judged us in the moment. Not what is going to come 10 billion years. No, in the moment. The truth of the Midrash is that God sees us in the present state, judging us only on our merit at the moment. Not 20 billion years to come. No. Not 200 million years that has passed. No, at the moment. That's what the Midrash is saying. It's a lesson. The angel said, let him die. But God said, no. The boy is innocent. I can hear his cry. He's in distress. He's in pain. He has no sin. Even though if his descendant will be the one that is going to destroy the holy city in the future, it has nothing to do with him now. Let him go, open the water, and let the child drink, and let the child survive. So we have to understand the Midrash, what our elders, our sage, are telling us. is for us to learn and to understand. God judged each and every one of us on our merit of the moment, not the merit that you have not done, you know, or not the merit that you did in the past. I say, you know what, God, you know what, I served you in the past, now I'm going to be committing sin. No, what you did in the past is gone, because you have destroyed what you did in the past with your sin now. Right? God judged us at the moment. So, let's see. Finally, what does it mean to be Abraham and Sarah? What does it mean? For Abraham, this incident was a test, the final test before the Akedah, that is the binding of Isaac. Rabbi David Polish suggests that Akedah was necessary precisely because of the incident with Hagar and Ishmael. Can you imagine that? Let's continue. God saw that Abraham was all too willing to sacrifice them. God saw that Abraham was too willing to sacrifice Hagar and Ishmael. Right? Therefore, it was after this thing that God tested Abraham. You were willing to sacrifice the unloved, the poor, the outcast, the unattractive one. Now, let us see how you do with the sacrifice of your loved son, Isaac. Understand me? This is what God is saying. It was after they sent them away. It was after Abraham sent them away that God said, okay, the Akedah is coming. The Akedah is coming. And God tested Abraham to go and sacrifice his son. Because it is easy. It is wonderful. It is quite easy for us to send out the one that we don't need. Oh, I don't need you. Go. Pack a load and leave. I mean, Ishmael and his mother, right? Abraham, they're the one unloved, right? They're the one without no place. They're the one that is not recognized, right? Oh, pack a load, leave. It is easy to do that because they are unloved. But what will you do for the one that you love? Can you do that? Can you send them out? And God said, okay, you have to go and sacrifice your son. Let me see how you're going to do. Because it's not easy, right? Yeah. So if it is easy for you to send those one away, let's see how you're going to behave in the one that you love. But we'll give the glory to the Almighty God that actually he passed the exam. Alright. Moreover, that Abraham and Sarah were so wrong in this story. Yes, they were so wrong. Their actions towards that woman, their actions towards Ishmael was so wrong. The Torah gives us correct narrative, showing us that we are human beings. That even though our father Abraham has his own weak side, each and every one of us, we have our weak side and our strong side. We are all human, not an angel. So the flow is a powerful. Everybody has their own flow side. It is a powerful message to us about our parents and our own story. It is impossible to enter adulthood without having been wounded, betrayed, or in some way disappointed by your parent. It is very hard for you to enter adulthood without you complaining about your parents. Hey, Mama! Hey, Papa! You didn't do this right! Mama, you didn't do that right! We complain, no? That is usual. Everybody, me, I complain too. Everybody complain. It's part of us. So, it is impossible, okay, right, yeah. It is impossible to enter adulthood without saying, I will not do it the way my parents did it. You know, we are very smart than our parents. I'm not going to do that. You know, what my parents did, what my mama and my papa did. Oh, I'm not going to do that. They did it wrong. They did you know. So, that is what Isaac actually did. Actually, Isaac. This is the step, right? This is the step. Isaac go above. Above who? Above Abraham, his father. I'm not going to do it the way my father did it. I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm not going to cast out my brother. I'm going to bring my brother close. The Torah said Isaac and Ishmael buried their father. Go to draw him close. Go to bring him in. Yes, the unjust has been done, but I can remedy it. You see, we need to understand that the injustice has been done because Isaac can see that Isaac put himself in the shoe of who? In the shoe of Ishmael. What if it is me that my mama is what? Hagar. What am I going to do? I will be like that too, right? Isaac was able to put himself in the shoe of his brother Ishmael, knowing that the injustice has been done, but it is my job to correct this injustice, to make it right. Not to be an enemy to my brother, but to actually draw my brother close so that we can have harmony, that we can have peace. And both of them came together and they buried their father. Okay, so let us see finally here. Is there redemption here? Do we leave these two helpless souls in the wilderness? No. Ishmael will go on and father a nation. Here we have 12 sons long before Jacob has 12 sons, meaning his nationhood proceed our own. When Abraham died, as I said, Isaac and Ishmael together buried their father. Genesis chapter 25, verse 9. And Torah lived again, even and especially in our lives. A generation later, Esau will go to marry a woman, a daughter of Ishmael, whose name is Mahalat. It is natural for Esau. I imagine that Esau and his father-in-law sitting down around a fire in the wilderness, talking about what it means to be an outcast. You know that Esau was an outcast too. You know, he was an outcast from the family because Jacob was one that was loved, while Esau is not loved by their mama. So Esau and Ishmael have a common ground. They can understand one another well. Just like the way Jacob understood who? Laban. You know, I always say so. Just the way Jacob understood Laban. So therefore, Esau and Ishmael could understand one another because Jacob was a cunning man and Laban was a cunning man. A thief understands a thief. Right? That way it is. Both of them are cunning, so they understand themselves perfectly well. The same thing here. Both of them are what? They are an outcast. They can relate to one another. They understand that. So, this is what it is. A story cast out of our memory. Now I realize that Hagar and Ishmael, Abraham and Sarah are more real than I have once thought. More present than I have been willing to imagine. Like Hagar, may we also find a well of water in the wilderness of life that had been there all along. May the Holy One, blessed be his name, grant us the spring of water. The world is a wilderness. It's a tough place. You can walk and walk and walk without rest. Without that water, the Torah is that water. Without that water of life, you can survive in the desert. The same thing in the world. Just try to imagine it. The life is a desert. And without the Torah, you cannot live. You can't survive it. So the Torah is a spring of water. It's a spring of life. That when we drink, we shall live again. He said, why do you waste your money? Why do you waste your efforts? Why do you waste your life for those things that does not give life? Why do you waste all your life for things that does not merit nothing? He said, come. Do not buy them. It is here, it is free. Why do you want to buy? Why are you wasting your resources? It is free. The water of life is free. It's here, the Torah. It's free. Come. Come. Let's drink. You will drink and you will live again. You will drink and you survive. You will drink and that energy will lead you to the world to come. When you drink, you will drink the water of life, and you have eternal life. And that eternal life will lead us into the garden of Eden, where is our home. Parasha Vayera. Shabbat Shalom.